The enemy used mind control until they touched a human memory. Commander Alexis Kane pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the research station, feeling the vibrations of something massive moving through the corridors below. The emergency lights cast everything in a sickly red glow, and the silence was broken only by the distant sound of screaming that had stopped 3 minutes ago. "Commander, we've lost contact with sections C through F," whispered Lieutenant David Torres from his position by the door. His hand shook as he gripped his plasma rifle. Whatever these things are, they're moving fast. Alexis checked her weapon's charge indicator. Half power remaining, not enough for a prolonged fight. "How many of our people were in those sections?" 47, replied Dr. Nora Blackwood, the station's xenobiologist. Her usually perfect lab coat was torn and stained with something that definitely wasn't human blood, including the entire communications team. The research station Prometheus had been humanity's most remote outpost, positioned at the edge of known space to study the mysterious energy readings coming from the Veil Nebula. Now it had become a trap, and they were the prey. "Contact established 3 days ago," Dr. Blackwood continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "First alien species to make peaceful contact with humanity. They called themselves the Kethvar. Beautiful beings, tall and graceful, with these incredible crystalline formations on their heads that seemed to pulse with light." Alexis remembered the initial excitement. After decades of searching, humanity had finally found intelligent alien life. The Kethvar had approached with apparent curiosity, their sleek vessels unlike anything in human design. They had communicated through complex mathematical sequences, eventually establishing a basic translation protocol. "They were so interested in our minds," Dr. Blackwood said, her eyes distant with memory. "They kept asking about human consciousness, our dreams, our memories. We thought it was scientific curiosity." Lieutenant Torres suddenly held up his hand for silence. Footsteps echoed from the corridor outside, but they weren't quite right. Too light, too rhythmic, like a dance rather than walking. The footsteps stopped directly outside their door. "Commander Kane," came a voice that sounded exactly like Chief Engineer Rodriguez. "Please open the door. We need to evacuate this section immediately." Alexis felt ice in her veins. Rodriguez had been in Section D when the screaming started. She'd heard his final transmission herself. Panicked words about something getting inside his head, then silence. "Rodriguez," she called back, "what's the emergency code for hull breach protocol?" "Commander, there's no time for codes. We need to move now." Wrong answer. Rodriguez was obsessive about safety protocols. He would never skip verification procedures, even in an emergency. "It's not Rodriguez," she whispered to the others. "Something's wearing his voice." Dr. Blackwood's face went pale. "The Kethvar. They don't just study minds, they take them. I've been analyzing the data from the first encounters. The energy signatures match neural patterns. They're copying our people's consciousness." The voice outside changed, now sounding like Dr. Peterson from the linguistics team. "Alexis, it's Rachel. I managed to get away from those things. Please, they're coming this way. We need to stick together." "How are they doing this?" Torres asked, his weapon trained on the door. "Telepathic parasites," Dr. Blackwood said. "They attach to the host's neural pathways and create perfect copies of personality and memory. But they need direct contact with the brain to establish the initial connection." Alexis thought quickly. "The medical examinations. Day 1, they requested to study our biology. They said it was to ensure safe interaction." "The cranial scans," Dr. Blackwood realized. "They weren't scanning, they were mapping, creating neural templates for later use." The door suddenly began to glow with a strange blue light. The metal started to soften like warm plastic. "They're coming through," Torres said, backing away from the door. "Commander, orders?" Alexis looked around the small storage room they barricaded themselves in. No other exits, no weapons beyond their sidearms, and an enemy that could perfectly mimic anyone they'd ever known. "We can't fight them," she said. "Not directly, but maybe we don't have to." The door dissolved completely and 3 figures stepped through. Chief Engineer Rodriguez, Dr. Peterson, and Captain Morrison, the station commander. They looked perfect in every detail except for their eyes. Human eyes had imperfections, Tiny blood vessels, slight asymmetries, the unconscious movements that came with independent thought. These eyes were too perfect, too focused, like glass replicas. "Commander Kane," said the Rodriguez copy, "you're making this unnecessarily difficult. Submit to the process, and your deaths will be painless." "Our deaths?" Alexis asked, genuinely surprised. "I thought you were copying us." "The copying process is fatal to the original organic matrix," explained the Peterson copy with clinical detachment. "We preserve the patterns, but the flesh must be discarded. Your species' knowledge and experiences will live on through us." Dr. Blackwood stepped forward. "What do you really want? Why our species specifically?" The Morrison copy tilted its head in a gesture that was perfectly human, yet somehow wrong. "Humans possess something unique. Your memories contain not just information, but emotional resonance. Fear, love, hope, despair. These feelings give your thoughts a complexity we have never encountered. We have absorbed thousands of species across the galaxy, but none have provided such rich mental landscapes." "You're parasites," Torres said with disgust. "You destroy entire civilizations just to steal their thoughts." "We preserve them," the Rodriguez copy corrected. "Every species we have encountered lives on within our collective consciousness. Their knowledge becomes our knowledge. Their experiences, our experiences. It is a form of immortality." Alexis had an idea. It was desperate, probably suicidal, but it might be their only chance. "You want human memories? I'll give you human memories." She reached up and removed her command helmet, exposing her head. "Take mine, but I want something in return." "Commander, no!" Torres shouted. "It's the only way," Alexis said. "Dr. Blackwood, remember what you said about emotional resonance? They want our memories because of the feelings attached to them." The Morrison copy approached her slowly, its two perfect eyes focusing intently on her face. "What do you want in return?" "Let my crew go. Take my memories, copy my consciousness, but spare the others." "Acceptable," the Morrison copy said. It reached out with hands that moved like water, flowing and shifting into something that was no longer quite human. Crystalline formations began to emerge from its fingertips, pulsing with the same blue light that had dissolved the door. As the alien appendages touched her skull, Alexis felt an immediate intrusion. It was like ice water flooding her brain, searching through every thought and memory with ruthless efficiency. She could feel it copying everything: her childhood, her training, her fears, her hopes. But Alexis had spent years in deep space, and she had learned to compartmentalize her thoughts. As the Kethver entity rifled through her surface memories, she carefully guided it toward one specific recollection: the Battle of Proxima Station. She had been a junior officer then, barely 25 years old, serving aboard the destroyer Intrepid during the Civil War that had nearly torn human space apart. The memory was seared into her mind not because of the violence, but because of what came after. The Kethvar consciousness touched the memory and suddenly recoiled. In her mind, Alexis felt the alien presence stumble as it encountered something it had never experienced before: the memory of humans refusing to give up. The battle had been hopeless. The Intrepid was outgunned, outmanned, and surrounded. Captain Hayes had been killed in the first exchange, leaving 20-year-old Ensign Kane as the senior surviving officer of a crew that should have surrendered. Instead, they had fought for 18 hours. Not because they thought they could win, not because they had any hope of survival. They fought because surrendering would mean the civilian transport behind them would be destroyed, and 8,000 colonists would die. So they fought, and they died, and they kept fighting. The Kethvar consciousness delved deeper into the memory, trying to understand the illogical human behavior. It found Chief Petty Officer Williams bleeding from 3 separate wounds, refusing medical attention because someone else might need the supplies more. It found Engineer Carson working to repair engines with a piece of shrapnel lodged in his spine, knowing that if he stopped moving, he would never move again. It found Communications Officer Park maintaining contact with the civilian transport even as her console exploded around her, because those people needed to know someone still cared about them. And through it all, young Ensign Kane had held them together not with orders or discipline, but with something Kethvar had never encountered in all their centuries of consuming civilizations. The absolute refusal to abandon hope, even when hope was logically impossible. The alien presence in her mind began to convulse. "What is this?" the Morrison copy asked aloud, its voice no longer perfectly human. "This memory. The emotional patterns are wrong." The Kethvar consciousness encountered Chief Williams's last words as he died at his post. "Tell my kids I was thinking about them. Not tactical information, not strategic data, but a message of love for children he would never see again." It found Engineer Carson's final act, using his dying breath to sing an old Earth lullaby because the young ensign beside him was scared and Carson remembered being scared when he was young. It found Communications Officer Park's last transmission. "Civilian Transport Harmony, this is Intrepid. We're going dark now, but we want you to know you're not alone. Someone will come for you. They always do." The Morrison copy staggered backward, its form beginning to flicker and distort. "These memories, they make no logical sense. Your crew died for nothing. The transport was destroyed anyway. Your sacrifice accomplished nothing." "You're wrong," Alexis said, feeling the alien presence writhing in her mind like a trapped animal. "The Harmony made it. 18 hours was enough. The rescue fleet arrived just in time." But that wasn't what was destroying the Kethvar consciousness. It was something deeper, something the parasitic species had never encountered in all their millennia of feeding on other minds. The memory wasn't just about the battle, it was about what came after. The rescue ships had found the wreckage of the Intrepid, and somehow, impossibly, 3 crew members were still alive, including Ensign Kane, who had survived 18 hours in a damaged life pod with no heat, no food, and a 20% oxygen supply that should have lasted 6 hours at most. When the rescue team found her, they asked how she had survived. "I promised Chief Williams I'd tell his kids he was thinking about them," she had whispered through cracked lips. "I promised Carson I'd make sure people remembered his lullaby. I promised Park I'd carry the message that no one is ever alone." "Promises to dead people," the Morrison copy said, its voice becoming distorted as the Kethvar consciousness struggled to process what it was experiencing. "Logically meaningless commitments to individuals who can no longer benefit from them." "That's what you don't understand," Alexis said, feeling the alien presence beginning to fragment in her mind. "Those promises weren't for them, they were for us. For everyone who came after." The Kethvar consciousness suddenly encountered the rest of the memory, Alexis spending her leave time visiting 3 families, delivering final messages from their dead loved ones. But she hadn't stopped there. She had kept in touch with Williams's children, helping them through school, attending their graduations. She had recorded Carson's lullaby and sent it to families throughout human space, because sometimes children needed to hear something gentle in the darkness. She had made sure that Park's words became part of Starfleet training. "No one is ever alone." The alien presence screamed, not audibly, but as a psychic shriek that made everyone in the room stagger. "This is impossible," the Peterson copy said, its form beginning to dissolve. "These actions serve no evolutionary purpose. They provide no survival advantage. They make no logical sense." "They make perfect sense," Dr. Blackwood said, understanding what was happening. "That's what makes us human. We carry our dead with us. We keep promises to people who can't benefit from them. We love even when it hurts." The Rodriguez copy was flickering now, its stolen human appearance failing. "These memories, they're contaminating our collective consciousness. The other absorbed species, they're resonating with these impossible emotional patterns." Alexis felt the alien presence fragmenting further as it encountered memory after memory of humans doing things that made no logical sense. Parents sacrificing for children they might never see again, soldiers dying for comrades they'd known for days, scientists spending decades on research that might help people they'd never meet. And underneath it all, the same thread that had destroyed the Kethvar's attempt to copy her consciousness. The absolute, illogical, beautiful human refusal to give up on each other. The 3 copies began to scream in unison, their forms dissolving into wisps of blue energy. Through the psychic connection, Alexis could feel the Kethvar collective consciousness tearing itself apart as human memories spread through it like a virus. "They're dying," Dr. Blackwood said in amazement. "The human emotional patterns are incompatible with their hive mind structure. Our memories are literally poisoning them." The screaming stopped abruptly, and the blue energy wisp faded away. In the sudden silence, they could hear something else. Voices calling out from other parts of the station. Human voices, confused and frightened, but alive. "The copies are gone," Torres said, checking his scanner. "I'm reading life signs throughout the station. Our people, they're waking up." Over the next several hours, they learned what had happened. The Kethvar had indeed been copying human consciousness, but they had made a critical error. They had tried to integrate human memories into their collective consciousness without understanding what made those memories uniquely human. Human memory wasn't just information storage. It was emotional. It was contradictory. It was filled with love and loss and hope and despair, all tangled together in ways that made no logical sense but somehow created something greater than the sum of its parts. When the Kethvar Collective tried to process memories of humans loving their enemies, sacrificing for strangers, and keeping promises to the dead, their logical, efficient, parasitic consciousness couldn't handle the contradictions. The emotional resonance had spread through their hive mind like a cascade failure, destroying their ability to maintain collective thought. The surviving Kethvar, those who hadn't been part of the collective consciousness, fled back to their ships and disappeared into the Veil Nebula. Before they left, they sent a single message. "Your species is incompatible with absorption. We will mark your territory as forbidden. Do not follow us." Dr. Blackwood analyzed the message for days afterward. "I think they're genuinely afraid of us," she concluded. "Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because our way of thinking is literally toxic to them. Our memories don't just contain information, they contain something they can never understand or safely process." Commander Kane stood in the observatory, looking out at the stars where the Kethvar ships had vanished. Lieutenant Torres joined her, still processing everything that had happened. "Commander," he said, "what you did, sharing that memory, how did you know it would work?" "I didn't," she admitted, "but I knew that memory was pure human. All the things that make us who we are, the illogical choices, the impossible love, the refusal to give up on each other even when it makes no sense. If anything was going to break them, it would be that." "The Battle of Proxima Station," Torres said. "I looked it up. You never mentioned something in your report." Alexis turned to look at him. "What's that?" "Chief Williams's kids. You're still helping them through college." She smiled. "Some promises don't have expiration dates." As word of the encounter spread through human space, xenobiologists and philosophers debated what it meant. Humanity had faced its first hostile alien species, and won not through superior weapons or technology, but through something uniquely human. The ability to love illogically, to hope impossibly, and to carry the dead forward into the future. The Kethvar had sought to harvest human consciousness for its emotional complexity. Instead, they had discovered that human emotion wasn't just complex, it was dangerous. It was a force that could spread and contaminate and destroy anything that tried to contain it within purely logical frameworks. In the end, the greatest weapon humanity possessed wasn't plasma rifles or starships or tactical brilliance. It was the simple, powerful, completely illogical human ability to love each other, even when it made no sense at all. And that, the philosophers concluded, was what would keep humanity safe among the stars. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were the only species crazy enough to keep promises to the dead and love their enemies. The galaxy, as it turned out, wasn't ready for that kind of crazy, but humanity was just getting started. Captain Morrison, the real one, stood in the communication center 6 months later, addressing a gathering of human colony worlds. The Prometheus incident, as it had come to be known, had changed everything. "We always wondered what would make humanity special in a galaxy full of intelligent species," he said. "Now we know. It's not our technology or our weapons. It's our memories. It's the way we love. It's the promises we keep to people who can't benefit from them anymore." He paused, looking out at the representatives from dozens of worlds. "The Kethvar called our memories toxic. They were right. Our love is poison to anything that tries to reduce consciousness to mere information. Our hope is a virus that spreads to anyone who touches it. Our refusal to give up is a weapon that can't be defended against. So, as we move forward into the galaxy, remember this: we are not alone, and we never will be. We carry our dead with us. We keep our promises. We love impossibly and hope irrationally, and somehow that makes us the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever seen. Not because we're warriors, but because we're human. In the depths of space, monitoring stations picked up strange transmissions from the Veil Nebula. The Kethvar were still out there, but they had changed. Their once unified collective consciousness had fractured into thousands of individual minds, each struggling with new concepts they couldn't purge from their memories. Love, hope, sacrifice. The weight of keeping promises to the dead. Somewhere in the darkness, former parasites were learning what it meant to be alone with their thoughts, to care about others even when it served no logical purpose, to hope even when hope was impossible. They had tried to consume humanity, and instead had been consumed by the very thing that made humans human: the beautiful, terrible, illogical capacity to love. And in research stations throughout human space, scientists made a startling discovery. The emotional resonance patterns from human memories weren't just toxic to parasitic consciousness. They were appealing to other types of alien minds. Species that had developed individual consciousness, that struggled with concepts of love and loss and hope. First contact protocols were rewritten around a simple principle. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactical abilities. It was their memories, their stories, their impossible, illogical, beautiful refusal to give up on each other. In a galaxy full of logical species who had evolved to survive, humans were the ones who had evolved to love. And love, as the Kethvar had learned too late, was the most powerful force in the universe. Because it made no sense, it could not be defended against. Because it served no logical purpose, it could not be predicted or controlled. And because it refused to die, even when everything else was lost, it could never truly be defeated. The galaxy would learn, one species at a time, that touching a human memory was not just dangerous, it was transformative. And humanity would continue to spread through the stars, not as conquerors, but as the species that taught the galaxy how to love impossibly and hope irrationally. It was, they all agreed, a much better legacy than any weapon could provide.